My name is Cynthia Campbell. I'm the Water Resource Management Advisor for the City of Phoenix. So what in the world does that mean? My job is to manage the city's water portfolio, kind of from the 5,000 foot level. So I don't run the utility. This is the floor where the utility lives. I actually live upstairs in the city manager's office. But my job is to handle all policy matters regarding water and water resource use. I'm the city's liaison with our major wholesalers in the Central Arizona Project and the Salt River Project as well. I deal with the state, I deal with the feds, and I kind of speak on behalf of the city of Phoenix on water policy. So,
and is that a role that other municipalities would have somebody like you, or is that more likely that Phoenix has it because they're a larger city?
In Arizona, especially in the metro area, most, if not all, of the cities have some type of water policy manager. Yeah. The degrees of authority vary somewhat significantly in some cases. Some of them work in the utility. I was in the utility up until about a year ago, and then the position was pulled back to the city manager's office, which I prefer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that that's the case. I don't see that in other states and other areas where there's a specific water manager, water policy manager.
Is that partly because, and you're probably going to get into this, but the water sources come from such different, maybe, like cities are piecing together their water supply, maybe some from CAP, some from groundwater, some from Salt River, some from I don't know what, so that partly because of the portfolio that there's more need for the kind of person like you.
I suppose that's one of the reasons. I can only speak for Phoenix in terms of why I think they created a position initially. I think initially it was created because there was an understanding relatively early on that, water resource issues for a city like Phoenix are kind of existential. I mean, it's not like sitting on a Great Lake. If you were in Chicago and you're looking at, Lake Michigan's going to have some problems. Maybe it has some water quality issues, whatever. But here, it's just much more existential. The entire city and its history was built on that.
Right.
And understanding that history is a big part of my job, which is actually what makes it kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Good. So should we let you do your presentation?
Sure.
We're rocking, Martha?
Sure.
We got what you need right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I swear you look like, and I know who you look like, and I just can't think of the actor's name. Who is it?
I should remember. So Roger Daltrey from The Who was the first. That was like 30 years ago, so I had big curly hair.
Yeah, I can see that one too. It's Christopher Walken.
Oh, that's it.
But a much younger Christopher Walken, by the way.
Same narrow face.
You look a lot like Christopher Walken.
Sicilian. I'm not sure Christopher Walken is Italian ancestry.
I don't know. I keep looking at you thinking, oh my gosh, any minute now he's going to say more cowbell. So
his brother looks like, oh my God, the guy from No Country for Old Men.
Oh. I'm trying to think of who that is.
There's the sheriff.
He's the guy that's
there's the hunter.
Yeah, it's exactly
the main guy, Javier Bardem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
he's got the long hair.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I called this one Phoenix Adaptation to Colorado River Conditions based on our conversation.
Right.
But this is a slide I use a lot because I think it kind of gives a good overview of the way we look at long-term planning. So it means a diverse and robust water portfolio. It's diverse in the sense that it has multiple sources of water. It's robust in the sense that pretty much for about the last 70 years, I would say, the city of Phoenix has worked its portfolio in a way where it always has more than it needs. And that's intentional.
Right.
That goes back, I say 70 years because I attribute it back to a point in time around 1950 when the city of Phoenix was offering to build some infrastructure gates at Horseshoe Dam on the Verde River, and that would hold more water. And the Bureau of Reclamation and the Salt River Project were really slow playing the offer. And there was a letter that finally went out from the city where they said, we're going to run out of water in 4 months. We need you to take our $3 million, an enormous investment at the time, for a dam about 40 miles away and put this on here. They agreed. We have Gatewater. Gatewater, as it turns out, is not one of our main sources, but I think from that moment on, the city said never again. We're never going to find ourselves in a situation where our margin is so small that, we could lose it.
Yeah.
So the other thing is investment in infrastructure. And that's, you just can't, it's kind of a given, but you can't say it enough, because if you're not investing in the infrastructure, you get enormous losses.
Yeah.
And you also have, you're susceptible to enormous loss. In Arizona, we're required to keep our water loss under 10%, which in some parts of the country would be kind of extraordinary. I sat on a panel once with a guy from New Orleans who told me that the city of New Orleans, their water loss is about 40%.
And by that, you mean just what's leaking out of pipes?
It can be what's leaking out of pipes, or
Yeah.
it could just be unaccounted for from an accounting standpoint. But does it matter? Either way, you don't know where the water's going, so it might as well be lost. So we maintain a 100-year assured water supply with the state. And that is something that we tell developers, we tell residents, people, it's something we advertise, frankly. I call this a culture of water conservation because it's really important for us that people who live here try as best they can to recognize that they live in a desert. They need to be more aware of water. They don't have the luxury of living someplace in the Midwest where they might have to not otherwise be so aware of how much water they use and how they use it. And so we call that a culture of conservation, because it's not in the context of now we have a problem so we're going to curtail. But it's more of, it's kind of like you look at your customer like a partner with you in conservation.
Check your microphone. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Make sure I turn it.
No worries. You want me to put it up higher? I'm probably turning my head a lot, and that's probably not.
Oh, that's probably, let me go.
You know
ahead
what?
and put it
Go
on
over
the
there.
side. Thank you. That's super. Thank you very much. You can adjust that.
No worries. That'll work. That'll work. Partnerships and resiliency. One of the things that I feel like I've been able to bring to this position is a recognition that Phoenix is not in this by ourselves. And there's been a lot of that over the years, of this kind of like, I got mine and the rest of you, whatever. I kind of look at it and say, what I said a long time ago to the folks I work for is, hey, look, if Gilbert, Arizona, which is a suburb, just down the road, or any one of our suburbs has a problem, the Wall Street Journal is not going to say that Gilbert, Arizona has a problem. They're going to say Phoenix has a problem, even if we don't have a problem. And so it is not in our best interest to watch our suburban sister cities fail. And to that end, we don't save all of them per se, but we try to look for opportunities to create efficiencies through partnership. And then anticipating a hotter, drier future, which is kind of the Arizona code way of saying climate change. So we don't have to fight over the term from a political standpoint. Then it becomes less of a political statement and more of just a factual statement, which it is. All right, so just so you get a background, this is what we use. This is not the portfolio, but this is how we use the portfolio. On an annual basis, we're using about 58% Salt and Verde River, which is up here in the city, and then 40% is Colorado River water. We only use 2% groundwater. We have a lot of groundwater, but we choose in Phoenix not to use it. So we would be considered, say, under the Safe Drinking Water Act, as a surface water system primarily. We use very little groundwater. That's not to say that we can't or won't, but we know that's our fossil supply. It's not renewable, not really. And so that's not something that we look at that as kind of like the last resort.
So then when you're making the 100-year, sort of guarantee,
Mm-hmm.
groundwater is to probably a significant degree a bigger share of that guarantee than the actual current use.
Absolutely.
Right, so
Absolutely. According to the Department of Water Resources, Phoenix has over 3.6 million acre feet under our feet.
Yeah.
So then basically the way they do it for the 100-year water supply is they divide it by 100 and say, okay, you're entitled to use 36,000 acre feet a year without, that's your allocation, right? You don't have to, we're not going to regulate you if you use under that amount. And we use about 5,000 acre feet a year, if that.
What's the recharge, you know?
Our, there's a natural recharge rate, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. But then there's also
I know you pump it in.
water banking,
Right.
recharge.
Right.
And we do a lot of that. It's a very difficult thing to do in the Phoenix metro area, but we have some,
Some other banks.
yeah, we have some other areas. I'll show you that.
With bank accounts.
Yeah, exactly. Although we do have some aquifer storage and recovery wells in the north part of the city, so we do have some storage in the city.
That was being facetious, but
Yeah, no, but that's counted from DWR's standpoint, that's counted in a different way.
okay.
It's like a different supply from their perspective, although. Okay, so you wanted to talk about like what we've done in the past. And so this is kind of like a barnstorm of what we've been doing for about the past 10 years. So in 2014, the city council saw what was coming, right? We all saw that there was going to be a problem on the Colorado River. I don't think any of us ever thought it would be here in 2022, but they did. And so they created what they called the Colorado River Resiliency Fund. It's a $5 million carve out of the utility CIP budget. And it can be used for all kinds of things that anything to do with keeping our portfolio resilient. So what we primarily used it for is water storage. And what I mean by that is we started ordering more Colorado River water at that time, using our full allocation, taking it and banking it underground in various areas in the state. And also we have plowed a good amount of that money into watershed health, specifically the Salton Verde watersheds, in the sense of the risk of catastrophic wildfire since the year 2000 has gone up significantly, and we've experienced some very significant catastrophic wildfires. Those wildfires cause a very large problem for us from a water quality standpoint. That's our watershed, and the long-term health of the watershed is threatened whenever you've got, just ash sitting up there. It really interferes. So we've invested with the National Forest Foundation, the Nature Conservancy, in long-term partnerships to fund restoration efforts in the forest. So we do, sedimentation control, as well as thinning, forest thinning, and other types of activities that help keep that erosion down. So the other seminal thing that we did in 2014 was what we call the Phoenix Tucson Exchange. So I alluded to the fact that we've been ordering since about 2016 much larger amounts of Colorado River water for banking.
Right.
The problem is in the Phoenix metro area, it's very difficult to get a large volume of water in the ground. It just won't perk, or you interfere with others. So what we found was that in Tucson happens to have a really interesting geologic feature to the west of downtown Tucson called the Avra Valley. It's a natural feature where you can really put a whole lot of water in the ground quite easily. That's what that is. That's what a picture is. Those are the large basins that they use, and that's a very old picture because they probably have about 5 more of those. Each one of those basins is about the size of 4 football fields or so, and they're perking about 3 feet of water a day.
3 acre feet.
Yeah, I guess you could call it. It's probably about an acre foot because it's about over an acre. So
And so by perking, they put the water there and it just goes down into the aquifer. So it's not, and so there's some evaporation clearly because it's sitting on the surface.
sure.
But it perks effectively enough that you get most of it down, not a.
I would argue that Tucson this is under state law. These are considered underground storage facilities.
Yeah.
I would argue that the Tucson Southern Avra Valley facility, which that is the best one in the state in terms of its ability to absorb and perk and hold water. And evaporation is kind of kept to a minimum because it happens so fast down there. So, but how do you do that, right? I mean, look at a map. We're 150 miles north of of Tucson. How do we store water down there that we can never get back? So it was kind of a unique
It's an
maneuver.
exchange, right? So
It's an exchange.
They also get water from the Colorado, right?
Right, they get water from the CAP, so we put our water down there, and then when we want it back, and this year will be the first year, we take it off the CAP. Thank you. I've always thought it was a very simple concept, but
Right.
it
Well,
was
let
not
me-
easy trying to explain it to people.
Yeah, we're learning about that, and
They were like, "What?
let me
How do you do that?"
just ask you a question. Is it your perception that because of these types of initiatives that Arizona is in some sense more advanced in the water exchange process than many other parts of the basin? You may not have familiarity, but it seems as if there's a lot of different, like, this is agency to agency, but I also
Right.
there's like more like, let's say, tribal to municipality, or farmer to somebody else, right? Those kinds of exchanges seem pretty common here as a way of conserving water, and elsewhere, like water conservation considerations seem to be that if I don't use it, I'll lose it.
Right. And that's kind of, I mean, there is some, if you don't use it, you lose it. I mean, that's why we bought that water. We call that shifting water through time, right? So we bought water that was going to be available to us in 2016, 17, 18, 19. In the coming years, that same water will simply, probably after next year, won't be available to us.
Right.
And so now it's sitting in Tucson.
Right.
But Tucson has the largest, higher priority contract with the Central Arizona Project, an M&I subcontract.
Okay.
Theirs is a little larger than ours, believe it or not. And so as long as there's water in that canal, that we can get it back.
Right.
Now, once upon a time, I used to say that, and that would be the end of the conversation. Nobody would ever think about it. Today, we have to say, well, will there always be water in the canal?
Right.
We simply didn't talk about that more than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So anyway,
We're quite familiar with like the drought contingency plan and the cuts.
Yeah.
In terms of the senior rights and how that works out. What is that system like for, I guess, Phoenix? Where does Phoenix line up? You said behind Tucson, but
and not even behind, really co-equal. Theirs is just bigger. Their allocation is a little larger than ours in that sense. We're pretty much on the same par. Most cities are, in terms of we all have, or most, I guess we all have, municipal and industrial contracts. So those are higher priority, but they're not quite co-equal with Indian priority. So we have access to Indian priority water through leases. And that's something Tucson doesn't have. So when you look at the overall CAP portfolio, ours is about 40,000 acre feet larger than Tucson's.
may I ask what active leases there are between tribes and what tribes?
So we have leases with the Gila River Indian community for about 15,000 acre feet. The Salt River Pima Maricopa tribe for about, 3,000. The Fort McDowell tribe. We have a pending lease with the White Mountain Apache because their settlement hasn't been completed yet. So whenever that happens, that'll be about 3,500 acre feet,
Generally, how long are those?
99 years.
99 years.
That's the way those were. Now, if you were to negotiate something today,
Yeah.
I think the tribes have started to say, that's too long.
Yeah.
We don't want to alienate our water for that many years.
Because I know I've read something about water markets, and there's sort of a trend towards shorter term.
Much.
Yeah, because it's more efficient with the way the water market.
Right.
goes.
Well, and keep in mind, too, that each one of those leases that I just identified were really part of their larger water settlement. And so when a tribe does a water settlement, really one of the biggest things that they need in the short term is cash, because usually they're trying to set up a viable water system.
Yeah.
And so cities have been able to provide the cash and the cash inflow, and actually been asked to provide the cash inflow by the state and the federal government, so they don't have to do so much. And in return, we get these leases.
Yeah.
So Phoenix has been a part of, I think, almost every water settlement in this area for sure. And we've been in the room for others, maybe not with leases, but some of the other suburbs have done leases. So let's see real quick. So I'm going to get you going. In 2017, we used that Colorado River Resiliency money to partner with the Gila River Indian Community, Arizona, and the Bureau of Reclamation, Walton Family Foundation. We funded 40,000 acre feet of system conservation. So if you know DCP, you probably understand the concept of system conservation, right? You buy it, you leave it, nobody gets it back. And I think our contribution was $2 million at the time. And we kind of saw that as a good demonstration of what cities can do in terms of helping with the financing.
So we've seen system conservation on a few levels. We've seen it in terms of improving the infrastructure. So you're talking more system conservation.
This was straight fallowing.
Fallowing and leaving it in Lake Mead, or? Okay.
Yep.
Fallowing is the mechanism in which you save the water and then.
Right.
Okay.
The Gila River Indian Community, because for the basin, you have to demonstrate that it's actually been put to use. So you can't do system conservation with water that's never been used before, which is a real sticking point with the tribes at this point. That is one of the basin-wide issues with tribal nations, is that they would like to start to apply their unused allocations to things, and there's a lot of resistance to that amongst, especially the upper basin folks who, no way, you can't, if you're never using it before, you can't now use it to count.
To fund yourselves.
Yeah, or you can put it to, if you could actually put it to beneficial use, nobody's standing in your way. But what they're saying is you can't market that water in a way that,
Yeah, that's really interesting, because we've been talking about use it or lose it a lot on a trip, but more in the sense that
it's kind of a different
don't
form.
Don't have the incentive to use less water, because then they lose the ability, to grow what they want to grow sometimes if they're trying to do more fields of alfalfa or something. But the reverse of that is very interesting here, that people want to use it so they can obtain. That's really fascinating.
It is, we are a classic tragedy of the commons.
Yeah.
Right? So in 2017, we did another agreement with a small community in Avondale, which is just west of here. Very similar to the Tucson Exchange, because they have a small USF, underground storage facility. But what we found in the context of doing that little agreement was that the city of Avondale, which has a very small CAP allocation, can't physically get it. There's no infrastructure to get it to them. So they were doing a practice that is allowed. We call it annual storage and recovery. So they basically take their allocation and they stick it in the ground someplace not close to Avondale, and they get credits for that then they pump in Avondale. It doesn't quite work out.
Groundwater in Avondale. Right.
So they're pumping their own aquifer, but they're not recharging it effectively, from a practical matter.
So it's kind of a treading water going down. Right.
And so what we found is we said, well, wait a minute, we're next to you and we're between you and the CAP. What if we wheeled your water through our distribution system? Right. And so that's what we've done. So now Avondale actually has access to wet water from the Colorado River because we're able to wheel it for them.
Right.
We've done similar things with a private water company called EPCOR, I think on smaller scales with Scottsdale and such, but it's something that we found we could do too, just because we're so vast. Yeah. All right. So this is the more recent, right? So we participated in the drought contingency plan. I sat on the drought contingency committee, whatever that thing was, a committee. That was fun.
Who was at that?
Who is at that table?
At that table.
Too many farmers, frankly, but it was a table of Arizona water users and people with interests in Arizona water, so included development interests and growth interests as well. Very few cities: Phoenix, Tucson, Scottsdale, and Goodyear. I don't know how Scottsdale and Goodyear got chosen, but 4 cities total. And very little, only 2 tribes, I think, were at the table. And then the Farm Bureau, the cattle growers, the
Cotton growers.
the cotton. You know, it was a plethora of farming interests. The Arizona DCP, or the Arizona implementation of the drought contingency plan, was really designed to mitigate the impact to farmers, because otherwise politically it just simply would not have gone through the legislature.
Yeah. Yet the Central Arizona farmers are taking big cuts.
They're taking big cuts, but they got paid quite well to do it.
Yeah.
And so one of the
We're talking to one farmer from Goodyear and one from
South of Phoenix. but
South-
maybe-
Pinal County.
from Pinal.
Yeah. And they pretty much lost, or they're losing, they're going to lose everything
Yeah.
in terms
So
of
the
CAP.
the Farm Bureau people that were powerful, they were those mostly Yuma interests, or
No, they were, I mean,
just Central Arizona?
it was Central Arizona, but Yuma was definitely at the table as well. And you know, the farmers in Pinal County and the farmers in Yuma are not,
Yeah,
at that table, they were not aligned.
Right.
And that, you know, they didn't advertise that fact, but they were definitely not aligned.
And that's primarily because of where they sit on the pecking order.
Priority, sure.
Yuma farmers have first rights, and these guys
They
are.
have higher priority rights than we do.
Right.
So, yeah, and it's a different kind of farming, right? Yuma farming is large scale corporate farming. I mean, they're growing winter vegetables. They'll tell you, if, I'm sure you guys already heard this, if you went there.
We heard it in Imperial Valley.
Yeah, so
We didn't get it.
They're on the California.
they told you if you had a salad in the winter that something in the bowl was grown
They
there.
did say that exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the, it's true. It's not untrue, but
It's a little bit less sexy in the summer when it's just thousands of acres of alfalfa, and they
Yeah.
just tell you, "Oh, it's so profitable for us."
right.
Okay.
It is profitable for them. So one of the things that we came up with, Phoenix did, in the drought contingency plan, was a plan we called USF to GSF, or underground storage to groundwater storage facility. A groundwater storage facility is basically in lieu water. You provide wet water to a farmer so they won't pump groundwater. And so what we agreed to do as part of the drought contingency plan to make it try to mitigate these farmers was, this year we sent, well, collectively, I don't know, a handful of cities sent about 24,500 acre feet directly to Pinal farmers of our water for storage. We get credits back. And the state will barter with us on the credits, so the credits are in our AMA. But that's just flat out wet water. We paid for that water, and they didn't pay us for it, so we just gave it to them. Phoenix gave 12,500 out of that, but that was one way we could kind of contribute to making the deal happen. Then in 2019, right after that fun stuff finished, I got to do a citizens ad hoc committee on water conservation here in Phoenix. And we talked about different and new ways to do water conservation programs, and we're just now starting to really implement those. This thing you see here is the drought pipeline. That's part of it. Our drought pipeline project is about a 60-inch main that runs through the central part of the city, south to north, because what we realized about 5 years ago was that there is a possibility that there won't be water in the Central Arizona project in the years to come. And that was a very small possibility at the time we started talking about it, but we thought it was an unacceptable risk because Phoenix is kind of split in two. The southern part of Phoenix and central, where you are right now, relies upon water from the Salt River Project. It's called project land, right, in that sense. And so it's good. SRP is actually doing quite well in climate change. They've figured out a way to operate their reservoirs. It's not the same as the Colorado River Basin. The other part of the city, north of the Arizona Canal, that's the newer part of the city, relies upon Colorado River water. Well, what we realized was if the CIP goes dry, we would not have sufficient
You have the water coming
access.
from the north for those folk. You have the water coming from the south, and they weren't meeting. Fair?
That's fair. And we have some rights in the Salt and Verde that are independent of SRP.
Right.
So that means we can use them anywhere in the city.
Right.
But we had no way to move them.
Right.
So we said, well, we're going to have to do we originally called it Pump North, but it's a drought pipeline. And you know, I got to say, from the utility standpoint, it's pretty extraordinary to conceive of something and in about 5 years, you're able to build a 60-inch main that runs literally through central Phoenix, right up through the preserve and up to the north part of the city. It'll be ready by next January,
Right.
which is good because we're going to need it. Maybe not next January, but probably within the next 3 years. So then there's the 500 plus plan, and I don't know. I'm assuming you guys have heard about
But
that.
just a bit, so I'm interested, were you in the meetings for that too?
Yes.
Okay, so that took you, were you in the 500 plus plan for Arizona or for?
No, I wasn't. We do not have a seat at the table on those larger regional discussions. So they came to us with that, much like the drought contingency plan.
Right.
They came to us and said, here's the cake, figure out how to split it.
Okay,
So the 500 plus plan well, we need to come up with 500,000 acre feet of water. This has been a difficult conversation for us because we don't philosophically think that cities are in a position to kind of make those big moves. We don't have that kind of water to be able to make a difference in a plan that calls for 500,000 acre feet to be left behind. But we did participate in that plan to the tune of just under 16,000 acre feet, and we're being asked to do more.
wow, so wait, 16,000 acre feet is about 3% of that, right? Because
Of our total allocation?
of the 500.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have,
So some quick math here, that's 4,000 acres, or 4,000 acres of alfalfa. Because 1/4 of a field of alfalfa is 1 acre foot of water.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about the math, but I hear what you're saying. It's a substantial, you're saying it's not that much
It's
alfalfa.
not that much alfalfa.
Right.
no. Which is why we think that large-scale farming, especially on the main stem and in California, should really be contributing to this more. And to date, that hasn't. So the 500 plus plan right now, as we sit here mid-year, is at about 250. That's about what they have pledged. And, you know, a lot of that water is coming out of tribes. The Gila River Indian community and the Colorado River Indian tribes specifically have made substantial contributions. And in fact, most of that water, 95% of the pledged water is coming out of Arizona versus California. And so we're waiting.
For the 500?
Yeah, to make up the
95%.
of the 250.
Of the 250.
So we've made up almost half of it, but we don't have, I mean, as a state, the profile doesn't
Putting it
work
another
out.
way, IID, you know,
It's
Imperial,
contributing nothing.
and Metropolitan is contributing a little
They were planning on it, but they had to back away from
because
it.
of the water from the north, probably, they're arguing.
Yeah, they have a significant problem.
Right.
So
That's-
they were going to contribute by basically forbearing some of their intentionally created surplus that's already in Lake Mead.
So of that 250,000,
It's there.
of that 250,000, you said a lot of it is tribes. Is there any sort of worry that some of that commitment are dry rights that they haven't used?
That goes to that issue of no, it can't be because it's not under the plan the way it's structured. It cannot be that. They have to be rights that they've actually used.
It's water that is proven that they've already had for beneficial use. Okay.
They have to. That's one of the things you have to show is that you've actually already put this water to beneficial use in the past.
Gotcha.
So now that includes, in Arizona, beneficial use includes storage.
Yeah.
So-
I think it's a common synthesis on this on like a bigger level, but also at the farm level, we were told that in order for a farmer to say, yes, you've conserved water, you have to have the same crop over a 2-year period and say, we did the exact same thing, except we used less water. So
Or we fallowed.
That's how IID decides to do that.
Although it's,
Right.
and it's close, it's that you have to show you're saving compared to the normal conditions. It's actually not year over year necessarily. for
Right.
you. They don't, it's like against a baseline. This is standardly what you would use to grow this amount of alfalfa. And then look, I'm using 2 acre feet less. Okay, I saved that.
And many just fallow. They don't use less so much as just they take fields out of cultivation.
So we've talked about farmers getting paid to fallow because, that's water saving. In the 500 plus plan are the people that are giving up.
I'm glad you asked.
Are they?
Getting paid?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So Phoenix is getting paid. It's
By-
200. That was part of the 500 plus plan included a memorandum of understanding between the Central Arizona Water Conservation District, that's CAP, MET, and SNWA to pool money, and the federal government. I think also kicked in like $100 million. So they all pooled a bunch of money, created a big pool of money, and that's where the money's coming from for the compensation.
So you said Met and then,
Southern Nevada Water Authority,
okay.
and then the Central Arizona
And
Water
you were trying to
Conservation
say how
District.
much? It's like, sound like 200 and something, 200 and,
In terms of money or in terms
no,
of
per acre foot.
$261.61.
Okay. That's pretty.
It's funny, that amount was actually negotiated in the drought contingency plan because when we mitigated farmers, we realized that the higher priority water users really didn't even have enough water to give up. So we made a deal, and it was really driven by the Gila River Indian community, that they would agree to take money in lieu of their water right. And so they negotiated a price that escalates every year. And so lo and behold, when they came along with this idea for the 500 plus plan, it was like, well, no, you already have a negotiated price. They were kind of disappointed. I think they thought they could negotiate a lower price. We just get to be the beneficiaries.
Right.
So yeah, so we're going to use the money that we get out of that. That's going to our conservation programs.
Right.
And I think that was really all I had. So I know you guys probably have a lot more questions. Maybe.
You said the money, I'm just making sure. So the money you got from the water you're giving up goes back, so it might be a good feedback loop there.
Yeah, we kind of looked at it that way. I mean, it wasn't about the money. It's never been about the money. It's about the water. And more importantly, because the volume of water that we could give truly isn't going to make an enormous blip on the 500 plus plan. In some ways, it's a little bit symbolic, but I think what we're trying to show is our commitment to trying to make a difference in the basin. That volume that we gave up, which is an odd number, it's 15,977 acre feet. It represents the amount of water that we were getting in mitigation under the drought contingency plan. It's water we should have been given up to begin with, right? If we were going to take the cuts that we agreed to do in DCP, instead of somebody having to find water to make it up for us, we said, just keep it. We gave it back.
So those are cuts you agreed in like Arizona's implementation of DCP.
They had to mitigate it.
Yeah.
And the reason they had to mitigate it was because they wanted to get to those farmers. And those farmers are the lowest priority. And initially the request was, for those of you who are in the higher priority pools, we want you to waive your priority. While we pass you by, you take a cut, and we're going to give it to the lower priority. And we said that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because we had to maintain the priority pool. Yeah. So if you're going to mitigate the farmers, you have to go through us, and us being cities and tribes primarily. Right. And so that's why it wasn't because we wanted mitigation. We frankly would have just rather taken the cuts the way the DCP dictated. Yeah. But in order to get the deal done, we had to find a way to mitigate these farmers in Pinal County, at least to some extent. So that was the political reality in Arizona of getting the deal done.
Once the farmers were mitigated in the 2019 DCP, you said we're mitigated too, because we're not taking cuts that they're not taking, right? And then,
they had to pay us as well.
And then when it came to 2021, exactly, you said, okay, now we'll throw in the amount that we mitigated before.
The water.
Right, the water, and we'll take the payment.
We'll take the money.
Right.
We didn't want the money.
Right.
Again, we didn't.
If the cuts were happening, you would have been in, but again, to maintain the, in some sense, not to be giving away what other people are not even willing to do, right?
Exactly.
For money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now we're having conversations about whether or not to do more. in the 500 plus plan. And frankly, we have mixed feelings about it. Not a couple of reasons. One is the plan isn't going to work if it doesn't have at least 500,000 acre feet. And frankly, I'm not even sure if it will then, because of the decision that came subsequent to the 500 plus plan on the Bureau of Reclamation holding back 480,000 acre feet in Lake Powell
This year. Right.
And probably next.
Right. And maybe more.
And who knows?
So they saw that you guys were gonna put 500 in, they're like, oh, we can just hold all this. Yeah, that's not the point.
It wasn't the point. It was to try to prop things up because we were trying to stay above elevation 1030 in Lake Mead.
You're trying to stay above that so you don't go to the next level and cut back.
Well, no more, because we're trying to stabilize the system. It's crashing.
Yeah.
And, you know, as it turns out, then the Bureau of Reclamation did something that's going to further destabilize it for Mead, although we totally understand why they did it. I don't want to make it sound like it was, you know, a bad decision.
They're balancing the two, and they're keeping Powell from going under, but Mead is getting more destabilized.
Right. And so how many years will we do this before Mead is to the point where you're going to have to do something? And I'll answer my own question. We're 2 years off, if that.
And why is that 1030 like, what's the significance of that 1030 elevation?
That was set in the drought contingency plan as a point, as a, you know, kind of a signpost. We're going to renegotiate. We're going to come back to the table if we see a projection, not the actual elevation, but a projection on the 24-month study that we could hit 1030.
And 1030, what, yeah.
1030 is a tier 3 shortage.
That's just short of the dead pool, or it is the dead pool?
Dead pool's at like 895.
At which one? At
Mead.
Oh, Mead, sorry. 10
Yeah.
Mead.
Yeah.
At Powell, they've been.
It's like 3475.
At Powell, they've been right at the edge of the dead pool, which is why they're holding back, right?
Right. Plus there's some, Glen Canyon Dam is just built a little bit differently. And so, you know, there's some dam issues about operational issues. You can't get water out through those bypass tubes.
Hoover has the lower, some of
The bypasses are lower.
Right. So.
But again, still 895.
Right.
And so if we defer a big chunk of water from delivery from the upper basin to the lower basin, there's about 7.9 million acre feet left in Lake Mead. Last year, I think, or this year, we're on par to deliver 10 million acre feet through the lower basin. We're a year off. I mean, if we don't, and I don't see how this happens, barring the 3 states substantially cutting their diversions.
The 3 being California, Arizona, and Nevada.
And Nevada. And of course,
Nevada's like this.
exactly. I was going to say Nevada doesn't have very much to give. We're already giving.
Right.
And California doesn't kick in until the tier 2B.
Right.
So
do you anticipate a summer of 2022 meeting like there was, or whenever it started? I think it was August of last year, or was it November? I'm trying to remember when the 2021 meetings were held.
you mean about the 500?
Yeah.
You know,
500 now,
that's a good
now
question.
they're flying right past that. So is there another one coming? I mean, I know the other 26
Mm-hmm.
guidelines had been the kind of target date for getting all this figured out.
Oh.
But my understanding is that we're like you're saying, the system's crashing. We're perhaps in new territory.
I'm not sure we have till 2026. Well, I mean, and when will those negotiations start? It's hard to say. That's one of the most frustrating things, I think, for large cities in the basin. And you know, I can't say I've spoken to and understand how they feel, but it's not too hard for me to imagine that Denver and Los Angeles, Albuquerque, Salt Lake City, Tucson, we're all kind of in the same boat. None of us have a seat at the table in the regional discussions, yet we have very large population centers that, at least in part, rely upon this water. And frankly, you know, my greatest fear at this point is that the 7 basin states are currently not speaking in any meaningful way about, you know, what are we going to do? I don't believe they've officially begun their discussions about the 2026 guidelines. And that leaves the federal government. And so I'm kind of asking myself, and I'm being told that, oh, the federal government won't let the system crash. It won't let the system crash. Okay, so what are they going to do? And when are they going to do it? Because for us, the level of uncertainty that comes with not knowing if the system will crash is actually worse than the cuts. If you know how much you're going to lose, you can plan for that. But if you don't know where the bottom is, what are you supposed to do? What do you plan for? And that's how cities roll. I mean, we can't react as fast as farmers can even. And I don't want to make light of it. If IID or any of the large agricultural interests had to suddenly take large amounts of acreage out of cultivation, I'm not minimizing that. That would be a significant economic hit to them. But what I am saying is that does not compare. You can't fallow subdivisions. You can't fallow taps. So what are you supposed to do if you end up in a very sudden catastrophic crash? That's, I think Southern California is kind of demonstrating what you have to do if that happens, but it's not ideal.
We've heard from some people that, in terms of statewide water resources allocation, there's a lack of coordination, I guess, between municipalities and maybe CAP and the Water Resources Division and stuff. Could you speak on if you could find that to be true, or how you've been?
Lack of coordination. I don't know that I would say that that's true. I know that in the Phoenix metro area, the cities have a trade organization in the Arizona Municipal Water Providers or Municipal Water Users, AMWA. Mm-hmm. And we, as water managers, meet regularly and we talk about what we're doing. We talk about possibilities for coordination. That is very helpful. Because of our exchange agreement with Tucson, actually it has forged a very strong partnership between Phoenix and Tucson that we communicate on a regular basis. And that's very helpful. But I will say this, sometimes that level of coordination comes a little bit organically. Yeah. Which you're relying upon personal relationships sometimes to do it.
And it seems like there's, you guys are very well coordinated with the other, municipalities around you and, places you share water with, but maybe to areas that are more agricultural, there's less of communication on how, to move forward with maybe between agricultural municipalities.
I would say in Arizona, that would have been really, really true prior to 2018. Mm-hmm. But once we did DCP, we all got up in each other's business in a way that we never had before. And in some ways that I like to think that there's some positives in there because there were relationships that were forged. There was a little bit of understanding between different sectors of users.
And has there been any subsequent meetings after DCP between,
To some extent, there is now what they call an Arizona Reconsultation Committee, which was the old DCP group. It has been, I think, a little less effective simply because DWR and CAP have really not convened it frequently. And when they do, it's pretty much to come and tell us what's already happened,
They're not asking you guys what you need.
No.
Yeah, it's just like, this is what you got to do.
Exactly. It's a little more of a, here, we're going to give you this information. Your feedback is, what do you think?
Can I ask a clarification? So, wait, the Reconsultation Committee, their role is what? Because yesterday I understood it as one thing.
It's been a little less than well-defined. How should I say that, right? So I think ostensibly it was put together when they realized that they were going to have to do the 500 plus plan, right? So reconsultation in that title comes from that DCP 1030 projection, right, that triggers reconsultation. So they knew that they were going to be talking to the other basin states, and they said ostensibly, well, let's put the Arizona water users back together and we can bounce ideas off of them. There's some subcommittees to that. I mean, there's a modeling subgroup. There's also a strategic committee, which was it basically is water users, a very small group of water users hand chosen by the state to kind of meet privately and for us to talk to them, and they bounce ideas off of us. I'm on that committee. There's about 12 of us.
Are they sort of a liaison between the regional discussion and the state discussion at all?
You are the state authorities?
No, the reconsultation committee. Like, are you guys sort of taking the ideas from interstate discussions and then bring them back to the?
No, I mean, I guess that could be true in the sense that, but keep in mind the bottleneck, the filter for that regional discussion are the general manager of CAP and the director of the Department of Water Resources. We get all our information from them. And so it's, to the extent that they provide it, to the extent that they provide us insights into those regional conversations, then we have those insights.
So the last regional conversation seems to me that I can at least recognize for having done an action is the 2021 meeting that came up with the 500+ plan. And are there ongoing?
Which really was only the lower basin states.
Right. So there hasn't been, let's just say, through this year, the Bureau has not been, leading the charge of coordinating the states where, these two, the department and CAP are coming back, consulting with you, going there, coming back. That's like when you said earlier, it's not clear to you, what the coordination is going to be at the top levels, because those conversations are not active enough that you guys are engaged in them in a way where you could at least be reducing the uncertainty about what's likely to happen.
That is correct. I am aware, because I'm on the strategy committee,
Right.
that there are meetings of the 7 basin states periodically,
Yeah.
but there's not, like, as I understand it, I don't believe that there have been any real substantive discussions about, if any, about what the guidelines would entail. So.
Excuse me. Can I ask a kind of a related question to that, which is one issue we've been grappling with is whether in the historical role of the Bureau of Rec to kind of bring supply and do engineering and make projections and all that, whether in some sense their institution is really set up to really kind of be in this era of trying to coordinate the response to the kind of, let's just say, we now got to bring the amount we use into alignment with the amount we have. And the amount that we have is, let's just say 25 to 33% less than what we've allotted. So
right.
There's going to be these kind of 500 plus discussions happening soon, because that's really 3 million acre feet, not 500, when you go from 15, not including the, Mexico down to 12, right?
Right.
So those kind of discussions are not really what the Bureau has done historically. And can they do that, or do you see the evolution of them in that direction? Is that something where the 7 states, in some sense, have to come forward and say, wow, we really need to partner with the Bureau on this because this isn't maybe what the Bureau does?
Right. And, that's a really great question, and it's a complicated answer. And I'm not even sure, but I'll give you my perspective on it, I guess. The Bureau needs to be that, whether that's what they are or not. I will say that during the last administration, which I think is less about the administration and more about the actual commissioner, Brenda Berman was much more forward about what we needed to do and very forceful about conveying those messages individually to the states that needed to hear them. I have not seen that level of leadership to date in this particular administration. I don't know why that is. I do know that there is a desire on the part of the federal government to let the states try to work it out amongst themselves and then implement, within reason, what they want. And I think that overall is a very good strategy, because the idea is everybody's become very litigation averse. Arizona v. California was a long case, lasted a long time. And I agree with that sentiment overall. As an attorney, I get that. But here's where the problem comes in is that, today we're in a situation in which the conditions are changing really rapidly. I used to joke that this was the slowest moving freight train that was going to hit us. I would say that in 2016, 2017. But, Mother Nature has really shifted gears in a way in the last several years. I mean, we would never have done the DCP probably the way we did it if we had known we would be here today. We really, truly believed that when we enacted that, because it was not pleasant to go through, we thought that we were doing something that was going to give us a level of certainty, a plan, right, that could be implemented in a structured way through 2026. We just had no idea that less than 2 years later, we could find ourselves at a point where we're having to scramble to do something different.
And so the measures weren't in that DCP were not drastic enough, is what you're basically saying.
Evidently not, right? I mean, it's hard to say drastic enough because, again, now, up to the point of DCP, especially the lower basin DCP, that's really what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Not the upper basin DCP. That's a different animal. But it's all been designed to prop up Lake Mead. We've always talked about propping up Lake Mead. But I've known, I'm aware of the fact that really the trigger was always Powell. But no one ever thought, well, maybe a few people did. I mean, I can remember folks I used to talk to in the mid-2010s saying, we're fussing about Mead, but if we ever have a problem at Powell, then we really have a problem. Well, we really have a problem. Here we are. We have a problem at Powell. So what has been categorized as a lower basin problem, I'm not convinced is just a lower basin problem at this point.
So I want to ask you, yesterday you and I talked on the phone about this kind of proportionality idea of saying, let's say there's 11 or 12 million acre feet, and now the lower basin states take their share of whatever division we make between upper and lower. Let's say it was 50-50, but it could be 40-60, just to recognize the use that's already going on in the lower basin. What is your opinion of that as just from your perspective first here in the city of Phoenix, of how that could work? Is that something that you can imagine the city of Phoenix and other municipalities saying, well, we're already doing these kinds of...
Right.
So.
Well, I want to be quick to say, my comment right now is not geared toward saying what is the best way to allocate, right? But I will say this, having a level of certainty, even if that certainty is zero for a period of time, or maybe forever, having certainty is kind of key to being able to plan. And certainty is relative, right? I mean, you can't get a guarantee. Certainty does not mean a guarantee, but at least it gives you a framework of understanding what your exposure is, right?
It could be a range. It could be between here.
It could be a range, right? And that's not a problem, but a range is something. Right now, we don't know where the bottom of this is. And that poses a real problem for cities. It poses a real problem for cities. So what I would say is if that were to be done, however that would come about, that would be preferable to this kind of, well, I can still sit here and say that the city of Phoenix is entitled to 186,557 acre feet. Those are the kinds of conversations sometimes I hear in the greater basin. People continue to talk about what they're entitled to, and it's kind of like saying I own that cookie jar and everything in it. Okay. That doesn't mean much when there's nothing in the cookie jar. And so, I think it's really important to start to get into reality. I think the problem that we're having in the basin, that I've seen at least, is there seems to be this conversation, and we talked about this a little, do we throw away the compact or do we keep the compact? And frankly, I think that whole conversation is becoming a smokescreen. It's a smokescreen for a deeper conversation about when are we going to start talking about what's actually in the river. I personally think that could still be done within the context of a framework compact that currently exists and has been in existence for 100 years. Right. Others feel that it can't be in the context of that compact because, and I think in part, I understand why they feel that way, because certain folks continue to talk as if their allocation can be fully met year in, year out, given the current state of the river. I think that's where the disconnect comes. It's not about the compact. It really isn't. It's about when are we going to get to the point where we have an operating plan that is dealing with reality? When will that happen? And will it happen in time, or are we going to wait and let the system crash? Because if the system crashes, the level, it's not just about uncertainty, it's not just about people who have rights on paper or by law, it's about the environment. It's about run of the river. It's about investments that the federal government has made for well over 100 years in a system of dams and reservoirs that would then be in question. It's catastrophic.
How much more time do we have?
Well, we've already done more than our hour, to be fair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say,
I have a wrap up whenever, after you ask.
Actually, I'm going to ask her to introduce herself again.
Okay.
That was what I was going to say, but you can wrap.
okay.
Who's on the mic on?
I thank you for being generous with your time, first of all.
No worries.
And that last answer was wonderful. I sort of wanted to, we've been seeing all these engineering marvels, including the pipe you talked about from south to north in Phoenix. And there's just this system in the West that is completely alien to somebody that, like me, it's from the Midwest and the East. And it's great if you don't look into any of the ethics or anything. As somebody who operates within the system of that and the reality of that, how do you sit ethically with people out here living in the desert, managing the water for people living in the desert? Does that cross your mind ever?
It crosses
It's
my
not the reality of
right.
the situation we have to deal with, but
Right. No, it crosses my mind in the sense that I'm aware of the situation, but it's so, to go back and undo that is really to undo an enormous part of the history of this country. I mean, and by the way, I mean, you can say, and you're right in saying how mechanically it works in the West with water is fundamentally different than how it works in the Midwest. But it was the folks in the Midwest who came out here and created this problem by saying, rain will follow the plow.
yeah.
They believed it. They really believed it. And they built, and then the idea of if you just water the desert, it'll come to life. Well, it does actually, but at what cost, right? So it becomes somewhat of an academic conversation to talk about, can we undo 150 years of history and development in the Western United States and fundamentally change it? I think the problem is the change, I don't see another way to do it. If you say, let's undo all of it, I don't think you can undo it without creating a vast wasteland in the American West that is, that can't support the populations it currently has, much less the populations that are moving to it. I'm not saying that we can't support those populations. What I'm saying is, if you undo a reclamation system of water management in the West, You can't have the modern Western United States. And I just don't think that that's something that could even be contemplated at this point. So for better or for worse, on the ethical considerations of why and how it was done, it was done. And I don't think it can be undone. I think we, unfortunately, are going to have to live with the new reality that is climate change, because I would argue that the system that we set up, that was set up historically, could have worked, did work. Climate change has been a complete game changer. It's not, yeah, there were problems with some over allocation. I will admit to that. I'll agree with that. But those could have been resolved because the variations weren't so significant that you couldn't correct. And we were, I think, in the process of correcting those. But climate change, I joke with some of my colleagues, we continue to come up with this plan and this operating guideline, and it's starting to feel a little bit like throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? And every time we come up with a plan that we think covers the problem and the shortfall, Mother Nature says, wait, hold my beer, I got more. And she's delivered, and she continues to deliver. And so, at some point, we're gonna have to do some more fundamental conversations, because barring climate change that's completely the opposite of the one we're experiencing, a cooler, wetter future, then we have to really come into reality with the situation we're in.
Thank you.